What's up, Damon? Anthony here. So, the idea of depth of senses is something a lot of writers sort of talk about, but I put into like a proper framework. And the idea is that there are three levels of senses, and this is how to get close to a character, right? This is what writing a novel can do that writing a movie can't do, or is difficult to do. It's more difficult to do. The three levels of senses are cinematic, close senses and deep senses. And if you just think of each of those as like a distance from the main character, even when you're in third person, this is sort of the key, the crux of third person limited stories. So when you read a Joe Abercrombie, The Blade itself, when you read Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, when you read Name of the Wind, these are all fantasy examples because I'm a fantasy guy, but it works with any third person stories. Slaughterhouse Five is first person, but he does use these with incredible effect. And here's the idea: cinematic senses are what we all pretty much share. It's sight and sound, and we more or less experience sight and sound the same. If you have five people in a room and something happens, you might get different perspectives on a thing, but everybody sees the bomb go off, right? They see it. Everyone hears the bomb a few blocks away. Everyone can see the person take out their guitar and hear them tuning it. Close senses are the senses that put you inside of someone's head, but they're still exterior. And then deep senses, there's no external stimulus at all. It's all happening inside, and it's as close as you can get. So the close senses are the other senses proper, taste, smell, and touch, texture. And anytime you have something like that, the velvet was soft against her skin, or something tasted warm, or the smell of the marshmallow as it cooked just a little bit too much. These all put you inside of a person's head. And I like to say that as a rule of thumb, you can do anything, tools not rules, but as a rule of thumb, when you're writing something, there's one hero in the scene, the person doing the changing, and you stay in their head. So everybody gets cinematic senses. You get to say anybody saw or anybody heard the thing. You get to say what people's expressions were like, what their mouths did, how their voice changed, whether they screamed. But only the hero, only the person doing the changing in the scene, which is how I define hero, only the hero in the scene gets close and deep senses. And that creates a closeness to one character for the reader. As soon as you start doing the Frank Herbert thing and hopping into a bunch of people's heads, it's people start to criticize your prose, which is true of Frank Herbert, by the way. He had amazing ideas, S tier world building, so good that we overlook some of his flaws in prose, right? But you can also do it on purpose. You can make it feel mythic. I actually do like some omnipotent stories. Zora Neale Hurston does some good stuff. Anyways, tools not rules, right? But as a general starting rule, when you're going from screenwriting to novel writing, picking one person and saying they get close senses, they get deep senses, and then break the rule when you really have to. And if you're going to break the rule, here's a pro tip: break the rule with the villain. Get into the villain's perspective every once in a while. Have them taste blood before they smile, or something like that. Deep senses, things like memory, focus, imagination. I put dreams because I work a lot with dreams in my material. One of my favorite chapters is that first chapter in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And it starts with a nightmare, with an immersive nightmare, right? And so it seems like we're in a new character's perspective. We're in the perspective of this butler, but we're actually in Harry's perspective having an omniscient, not omniscient, an omnipotent dream, right? So those are the three. And when I'm exercising this, a lot of times what I say is I'll teach somebody an exercise called zoom in, zoom out, right? So you start off zoomed all the way out, And then in your outline, you've set up the tone, and then you set up the actual place that they're in, and then you set up who is in it, and then you try to demonstrate their desire, you try to demonstrate their denial of the ugly truth that you'll release at the midpoint of the scene, and then the stressful thing happens, right? That the inciting incident, which is a term I much prefer, like disruption. The disruption happens, right? What I would say is, like, you outline your scene, and then you start all the way out in the cinematic senses, and you describe how something looks and how it sounds. And then when you're introducing what the place is, now before you even introduce the character, you start to talk about the smell of the place, the feel of their clothes on their skin, and then you say, Damon did not want to be here tonight, or whatever it is. And then you go really, really deep. And you can go into I just do this thing where I start all the way zoomed out and I slowly zoom in, and then I'll reset, and I'll start zoomed out and I'll zoom all the way in, and I'll start all the way zoomed out and I'll zoom all the way in. And as a general rule, if you're writing action, you want to stick with cinematic senses, because cinematic senses have this coldness, this starkness, but they've also got this logic to them. And then every once in a while, you insert the taste of something, the feel of something. I felt the bone crack, right? It's different to say I tasted blood from I heard my own bone crack or something like that. That's depth of senses. It's just a way to control depth of view when you're using words and not images. And like, obviously, there are masterful directors who do this with film. Terrence Malick comes to mind. Tree of Life is basically 1 2.5 hour cinematic poem, and that film is characterized by the texture. Or Coppola's Dracula comes to mind, where he has all of these the absinthe montages, right, that are very surreal and overlapping images of things that you can almost taste and feel. So it can be done, but it's a must-have in the toolbox of the prose writer. So yeah, that's depth of senses.